Bonjour, bonjour! In this segment, we're going to skip ahead a little bit, all the way to chapter 12 in our textbook. We won't actually cover all of chapter 12 this semester, but there's an important grammar point that I want you to learn about, and that is the subjunctive. When you take a language qualifying test, whether that is in the workplace to qualify you to do something or get extra pay, or if you're in graduate school and you have to show proficiency in a language, if you're able to write and to speak with the subjunctive mood, you will automatically jump up to the next higher level. And that's what I really want for you. So I wanted to make sure that we step ahead a little and cover this so that you will get the very best score that you can when you have to face that at some future point in your life. I'm going to break the subjunctive into two pieces. In this first segment, we're going to look at what it is, when you use it, and then just the basics for the formation of this particular verb mood. Notice I'm using the word mood. Some people erroneously say the subjunctive tense, and you'll also hear them say that about the conditional verb tense. That is not accurate. In French, as in English and most other languages, there really are only three tenses. There's past, present, and future. In addition to those three tenses, we have a number of moods. Who knew that verbs were moody? You are most familiar with the indicative because that's what we have studied up until now. And the indicative is very easy because it indicates what you are doing, what you have done, what you will do. And there's a certain solidity to that. So I am finishing my homework. That's a fact. That's what I'm doing. I'm indicating what I'm doing. Or I finished my homework. I'm indicating what I have done. Or I will finish my homework. I'm indicating what I know will happen. When we get into the conditional, which we're not going to cover now, but it's more familiar to you, so I just want to show you the difference with moods. You might say something like, well, I would finish my homework if my roommate were not interrupting me. The difference, do you see the difference? It's not what you are doing or what you will do, but what could happen if circumstances were different, or what could happen under other circumstances. So it's a mood, and in the conditional, there also is a past, present, and future. So now we turn to the subjunctive, which is a little bit odd. We don't use it very much at all in English. The only time that you might encounter that is in the phrase, if I were. Like, if I were queen for a day, or if I were a rich man. You know that phrase. It doesn't sound right to say, if I was a rich man. You instinctively know, but you haven't learned the rules behind the subjunctive because we really don't use it very much at all in English. Not true in French. In French, the really good speakers and writers of French know their subjunctive, so I'm going to try to clue you in on that. First, let me talk about when we use it. There's a whole list of expressions that require the subjunctive, but I like to make it easy. So my acronym that I created all on my own is NUDE. I know that sounds a little racy, but hey, it works. N is for necessity. When you start with something like, it's important that you do this, or it is necessary that we get this done. U is for uncertainty. I doubt it's going to happen. D is for desire. I want to go, I want you to do this. And E is emotion. I'm really happy that you did this. So as you can see, it's not necessarily describing something that is happening or has happened. It's describing something that I want to happen or something that's really important. It better happen, but there's not that degree of certainty that there is in the indicative. So it's called the subjunctive because it's really kind of a subjective attitude. It's not for certain. Let me give you a couple of comparisons that might make it a little bit clearer. In the indicative, you might say something like, you put your book on the table. Tu mets ton livre sur la table. If we wanted to make that really important, it's important that you put your book on the table. Doesn't sound very different in English, but in French, il est essentiel que tu mettes le livre sur la table. Hear the difference. Tu mets, tu mettes. I will explain how to form the verb in a moment. Another example, we can come. Nous pouvons venir. But in the subjunctive, I doubt we can come. Je doute que nous puissions venir. I love that sound. Nous puissions venir. You hear the difference very clearly there. So let's talk about how to form it. It starts on the bottom of page 413 in our text and then spills over onto 214. At the bottom of 213, you see the endings. It's very straightforward for the normal regular verbs. You take the third person plural root, and then you add the endings that you see at the top of 414. In the singular, these are the same endings that we use for ER verbs. For je, it's E. For tu, it's ES. And for il, it's E. Also for the third person plural, it's simply ENT, just like in an ER verb in the present indicative. Very simple. You know these endings. It's a little bit different for the nous and vous forms. There's an extra I there, so it's IONS for the nous form and IEZ for the vous form. It looks pretty much the same for an ER verb, but you can see in the chart at the top of 414 that it is a little bit weird for the IR verbs because you have that extra ISS stem in the root. So instead of je finis, it's je finisse. And when you're taking an oral exam, you want to make sure that you really emphasize that extra s sound so that your evaluator knows that you know what you're talking about. We'll look at a couple of irregular verbs here. In the middle of the page, our favorite verbs avoir and être. The stem for avoir is ai, which is pretty easy, and the endings are all the same, but you do see a difference with the nous and the vous. Let me explain why, and then it will be very easy to remember. Since the root is ai, we would have aions for the nous form. And in French, we don't like having two i's in a row, so we smash them together and we come up with a y. So it's nous ayons, and similarly, vous ayez. Pretty straightforward. For être, it's a little bit weird. I don't know where we come up with SOI, but that's the root for être, soit. The endings you'll notice in the singular go back to what we use for IR verbs, that famous SST that I mentioned to you earlier. So this is one of the verbs that has different endings in the subjunctive. But when you get to the plural, we go back to the normal endings. Again, we have that problem where we would have two i's in a row in the nous and the vous form. So we smash the i's together, we get a y. Nous soyons, vous soyez. In the last chart at the bottom of that page, you see some other irregular verbs. Faire is one that we use pretty often. The root is fasse, F-A-S-S, and then you add your endings. Pretty simple, once you just remember that. Pouvoir is one of my favorites. I don't know why, but I like that sound. Puisse. And then for savoir, it's sache, and because there's always a vowel after it, that it keeps the CH sound soft. The very bottom of that chart, you'll see a couple of verbs, actually 3 verbs, that only ever appear with the pronoun il, like falloir and pleuvoir and valoir. Pleuvoir means to rain, and nobody but it can rain. So it makes sense that we don't have to worry about the je form of those particular verbs. And then on 415, we have a chart with some other irregular verbs. Most of these will all be familiar to you. They're verbs that we talked about where there was a stem change because of the pronunciation. So it all is very logical. It's a little bit weird to get used to, but once you've mastered the root and the endings, it's going to come very, very naturally to you. You'll see that on pages starting at the bottom of 415 and 416 spilling over onto 417, there are a number of expressions that require the subjunctive. But again, it's very easy if just remember nude. Necessity, uncertainty, desire, and emotion. Your homework is already listed on the homework board. I'm giving you exercise B on page 417, and then I gave you links to a couple of online sites where you can practice this new verb mood, not a tense, but a mood. And for the moment, we're hanging out in the present tense, except when we use the helping verbs for the passé composé. I hope that all makes sense to you. I hope it makes it a little bit less scary and demystifies it. I will see you in class on Thursday. Bye-bye. Au revoir.